Hello, and welcome to Father Allan Talks. I couldn't go on without remarking on the very tragic death of baby Lily and her mother Carla Foster, who pleaded guilty just this week to taking abortion pills beyond the time limit of 10 weeks, which is when you should take them. She was about 8 months pregnant. She pleaded guilty to a charge and has since been sentenced to 28 months in prison. It's a painful reminder to me, as much as anyone, because I was the result of an unplanned pregnancy, and I could have very sadly gone the way of baby Lily if abortion laws were much more liberalized then than they are today. But it's also important to remember, and this should be so blatantly obvious, but does need to be said, to anyone out there listening who are victims of abortion. Those who have received one, those who have survived one, those who have worked in abortion clinics and have since quit. The important message that I want to send to you is that God's mercy is boundless. He loves you intimately. He wants you back into his embrace. That embrace is always open. It's always welcome. But what really struck me when news of this horrible story broke was the almost rabid reaction from a large number of pro-abortion advocates who were saying that, oh, this law is Victorian, this is horrible, we need to decriminalize abortion. But there are two cases I wanted to share with you specifically, though. The first is an interview between Julia Hartley-Brewer, a fairly well-known commentator, morning show host on Talk TV, and a woman named Jenny Starling, co-director of what's called Level Up. It's a feminist activist group. Now, Jenny said pretty much the same thing. These laws are Victorian, they're horrible, they should be done away with. And essentially, she said several times during the interview that abortion is healthcare. We all know it's not healthcare. Healthcare does not involve the deliberate taking life of another human being. But Julia is an open pro-abortion advocate, and I would have expected her to just nod along about this. But to her credit, she actually called her out on this. And she stated very clearly, at the time that baby Lily died, this is a baby. So she asked Janet the question, is it okay to kill a baby at 8 months along? And the only thing that Janet could say constantly is that abortion is healthcare. Abortion is healthcare. Abortion is healthcare. And Julia, once again, called her out. And she said, I don't know who you've been interviewed by that accepts this, but answer the question. She was getting really frustrated. And after a very heated discussion, Jenny came out and said, well, yes, it's your choice. So Julia sarcastically responded, well, sod the baby, right? The baby doesn't count. And this comes the whole problem of pro-abortion advocates. It's very singulistic, very narcissistic, all about me, not thinking about others, which is a very antithetical to the Christian message. And Julia Hartley-Brewer hit the point that many pro-aborts don't really want to admit that unborn children are indeed human beings who should have, but clearly don't have, a right to life, the most fundamental right of them all. Now, we can argue about time limits, but I would essentially argue that the Church got it right when it said life begins at conception, because babies can become viable, we would argue, at 8 months. Some would survive even before that. science and technology is gradually advancing, so there has to come a point when we say, this is indeed a human being. And the church, as the science is now starting to prove, got it right from the very beginning when they said, life begins at conception. There are several biblical references which support this. Two of the most interesting ones comes from Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 5, where it says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Another well-known one comes from Psalm 139, 13 to 16, where it says, for you created my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. The point here is that we don't determine who is worthy of life or who isn't. As soon as we start going down that road, bad things happen, as we're seeing in this tragic case. The second interview I want to talk about is the even more outrageous interview from Stella Creasy on BBC Newsnight. Now, Stella Creasy is a well-known pro-abortion advocate. You do not have to dig very hard to find her online advocating basically abortion on demand, without any exceptions at all. And she took very much the same position as Janet Starkey did in the interview with Julia Hartley-Brewer. But the point is, first off, it was the BBC, so she wasn't really challenged. But what I would have liked to ask her, and what I would still like to ask her if she's listening, and I don't think she is that Stella Creasy and a bunch of other pro-abortion MPs during lockdown advocated the program of sending abortion pills by post for women who wanted to terminate their children. And when lockdown ended and sending those pills by post was effectively no longer needed, she and her very same fellow pro-abortion MPs and their allies in the media were advocating to make this permanent. And they were successful, despite the fact that several medical professionals were coming out and telling them that, look, this could very much lead to tragic cases like this, and they have sadly been proven right. But her interview, I find, is quite outrageous simply because throughout the whole program, she was desperately trying to deflect the blame. She was blaming the current law on abortion to where the blame truly belongs, which is on her and her supporters. So what can we make from all of this? Well, first off, tragically, I suspect we're going to see more cases like this. And also, we're going to see more incidences of pro-abortionists like Stella Creasy and Janet Starkey pushing for the removal of what little protection unborn children still have in the UK. It is our obligation, everyone, from a moral Christian position, to challenge them and to call it out. And to support this, I would strongly advocate everyone who is listening to support, to advocate, to advertise for the March for Life UK, which is taking place in London this coming Saturday, the 2nd of September. Join us in London and march very clearly for the pro-life message, which is life from conception, no exceptions. God bless you.